Good evening. I do apologize for not standing up, but had a really long day at work and my feet are swollen. I'm diabetic, so I'm just gonna get right to it. Um, Today we are talking about group conflict. On the first slide, as you can see, is the types of conflicts. We have lack of role and clarity. We have working in silos. We have lack of communication and waiting to complete a task when you have to wait for somebody else. The lack of role clarity is more on the lines of the employee clarifying what it is that they want you to do. Without that clarity, you're confused and you're just going to go by of what you think that should be done, and when it comes down to it, it might not be the right way. So it's good for employees to really sit down with um, their employers and really figure out what it is that they are wanting them to do, so there won't be any misunderstanding or miscommunication of any sort or whatnot. And then, oh, I did forget the difference in prioritizing, because we all have to be multitaskers these days, and it's hard to prioritize of which one needs to be done here and which one needs to be done there, and that's where the clarity comes in. If you prioritize the task that you are needing to do, it will work much better. And then there is working in silos, which means basically you want to be, if you're a part of a team, you don't want to work alone. Working alone, it can be great, but as a team, you can accomplish more. And with that, managers should make it easy to work with a team or to work on a project all together instead of separately. So they should make you feel comfortable in doing such things. And then there's lack of communication. When there's lack of communication, things get misinterpreted and misunderstood. People tend to get frustrated. They tend to just say, well, if they didn't tell me what to do, I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway. And if they don't like it, well, then that's their fault because they didn't communicate with me. So with that, managers should really sit down and communicate what it is that, is to be done as a group and even as individually, because sometimes you're going to have to work individually even though you are still in a group, and that's where waiting on the completion of a project comes in. When you have to wait for somebody to do their job, and it could get frustrating if communication isn't there. So it's good to communicate on what you're doing, how long it's going to take, if it's going to take longer, updating, and even getting involved with the other team members to kind of help out that situation, because we all can get frustrated because I know me, I want it done and I want it done now, or, why do I have to wait on that person to do such and such? But if you're working in, let's say, a warehouse and you have different stations, you have to wait for the next person to get done with their part in order for you to do your part. The second slide is areas of conflict. We have internal and external. Internal has to do with who you're working with, like directly, like your employees, your manager, customers. And then external has to do with, outside of the workplace. You have barriers such as, the weather, the economy, where things are, family, home life. With me, outside of work, I have, my master's program, I have family, I have, other obligated things that, can contribute to having conflict, especially if you have a project that you're needing to get done. The third slide is the prevention of conflict. We have positive and negative. When we think of conflict, we think of the negatives, but in this aspect, the positive is identifying the issue that's going on, and what needs to be resolved and whatnot. It kind of tends to keep the employees, on their toes. And so that's a positive conflict. Now, with the negative conflict is button heads, the miscommunication, the lack of clarity, the waiting for somebody to complete their task, working alone and whatnot. And so you really just have to watch out for that positive and negative. And, let's think of conflict, in a group as a positive way, because you learn, there are different people that you're dealing with, and so there are different ideas, different backgrounds, different cultures and whatnot. Which brings me to my next slide. It can be very frustrating, if you're working with somebody that you're not normally used to working to, say somebody from a different country that, can speak English, but not, really well. And so that communication really needs to be there. And you could succeed, because everyone has good ideas. Everyone, wants to be heard. Everyone wants to put their input in there. And you can take that as negative conflict, but you can also turn it around to be a positive conflict, on that, where you're learning. Every day you're learning something new, whether you've been there for 10 years or whether you've been there for 2 weeks. Every day is a new learning experience. And so my example is whenever I worked at a payday loan place, I was the financial manager there, and I really didn't have a say-so in hiring, the person that they hired. My district manager did, but I did give my input, but apparently they didn't take it. But it's like we bumped heads, and it's probably was miscommunication on that part. But every time I tried to, it was just passive aggressiveness, and she really wasn't saying what was the matter. And when it boiled down to it, she wanted me to talk to her more, which I'm all about work and then play. You do your job, you're there, they pay you for that job, and then, when that's completed, then, by all means, go ahead and, see who texts you or, do something else. But I think the communication should have been there. And I think whenever it was there, that she should have took advantage of, talking to me. I like to think that I'm a, good person, and, I'm very easy to talk to, but I guess she felt like she couldn't. And so we ended up, kind of coming to an agreement of basically, if she felt right then and there, whatever she felt, she can talk to me about it and we would resolve it. Now the stores are closed, unfortunately, but I think that if there were communications, even with all the stores, because I know there were a lot of employees that were frustrated because there was no communication, and at one point we didn't have a district manager, and things were just really chaotic, and so the stores ended up closing. I hope, this presentation is, worth listening to, which I think it is. And I thank you for listening. All right. Have a good night.